Afternoon, good morning, wherever you are at. Nice to have you today. Hope you're enjoying Reconnect. I know for myself, I'm actually physically at a different conference this week at EDUCAUSE, but we are jumping back over and doing our Reconnect session. So happy to be with you and happy that you joined me today for to learn about Oracle guided learning. The first thing to know about Oracle guided learning is that two of those words are misleading, Oracle and learning. But I'll explain that here in a bit. Thank you for being with us, and we'll get going here. One thing to note is I do not have any of my team as a moderator in terms of the chat or questions. So certainly, raise your hand. Actually, quick question: can people unmute themselves and ask questions? I think that's a question for Charlie. Charlie, can people unmute and ask questions?
They can raise their hand, and if they have a question, I can go in and unmute them. I think we try to keep them muted for the time being, but yeah.
Sounds good. I would like this to be as interactive as possible. So hopefully, I'm sure you'll have questions, and feel free to raise your hand. If I see your chat in the chat window, I'll certainly try to answer that way. But it's always best to be able to speak live if you have any kinds of questions. So with that, let's get going. I'm just going to quickly just check and see who we've got today. So thank you all for joining. Okay. And nice to also see some friendly faces there on the registrations here. All right. My name is Cameron McClurg. I am a vice president with Mythics on the consulting side. We have come from, in fact, it says meet SpearMC. So we're in the transition SpearMC to Mythics. SpearMC was acquired by Mythics earlier this year. And so now I am now with Mythics, was with SpearMC previously, and I'll explain a little bit about that acquisition. My role as vice president with the consulting services side is to oversee our sales and delivery processes for our work within specifically higher ed, healthcare, and nonprofit, although that expands to really anything PeopleSoft I get myself involved with, and have most of our folks coming from SpearMC have come over and are working as part of my team here on the Mythic side. My personal background, I've been doing PeopleSoft pretty much my entire career. I had a little bit of a stint doing some EPM work, but PeopleSoft has always been kind of my foundation. And most of that time was actually on the client side, not actually in consulting. So I've worked at several different organizations. One you may have heard of, Expedia. One you may or may not have heard of, Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center, and then a few other organizations. And then I joined the consulting world about 7 years ago, when I decided that maybe I just wanted to kind of do what I did at one organization for many organizations through consulting, through a consulting path. So I joined SpearMC and now oversee clients, new initiatives, different kinds of things, of which Oracle Guided Learning is one of those new initiatives that we dove into about 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago, and have been really happy that we did. And I'll explain a little bit more about Oracle Guided Learning as we go. So SpearMC is, as I mentioned, now part of Mythics. Some of you may or may not know of Mythics. In the past, Mythics has been a firm that you may know from licensing, or many of you may have your contracts through Mythics. That has been sort of how Mythics has grown over the years. They've been around for 25 years and have contract vehicles in pretty much all states, higher education, public sector, federal. They have contracts everywhere and have built out their services capabilities, of which the acquisition of SpearMC supported part of that build out of their consulting services side. So we are now part of that Mythics umbrella. And as you may have seen on the first slide, Smart ERP was also acquired by Mythics, and I believe they also have some sessions here at Reconnect, and we're all just one big happy family now, working together on PeopleSoft, but also cloud, whether that's cloud infrastructure or also SaaS projects. So now with Mythics, we kind of do it all. I would just say we still have very much focus on PeopleSoft and PeopleSoft customers. In fact, that was also one of the focuses for Mythics as well as on-prem customers. But as organizations are moving to cloud, whether that's cloud infrastructure or SaaS, we're there to support those efforts as well. Just click on here. It is not migrated. There we go. Okay. And now, of course, it goes too fast. Let me go back. All right. Here we go. If you're interested, one of the things that SpearMC is known for is our training, our PeopleSoft training, as Oracle sort of started to pull back a little bit in terms of their training support for PeopleSoft customers. We kind of stepped up and started to build more and more from a training perspective. So you can check out that QR code. I think there's some more slides at the end, but this QR code would take you out and you can see all of our public sessions that we do. We also do private sessions. So any topic, both technical, functional, we've got already training content, an agenda, all of that ready to go. And so many organizations work with us from a training perspective, but it's just one of the things that we do. But I will say that that legacy of training led to that relationship with Oracle, where when they were looking for somebody to take Oracle Guided Learning out to the PeopleSoft community, they looked to us to see if we could do that, and we were glad to take on that initiative, which was, like I said, about 4 or 5 years ago. And I'll explain that here in a second. So let's talk about what you're here for today. This is not this was not my desk or supply closet at my organization, but it could have been. Mine looked something like this. And this is it's sort of a joke, but it's sort of real. This is how we think about training. And I would say it's not just in the past. This is how we still think about training. I'll explain that here in a second. But essentially, we still have a legacy mindset when it comes to training on PeopleSoft. We think about when we want to roll out a new feature, or let's say we're doing an upgrade, or we want to explain to people how to do query, we'll write up everything we know about that topic in typically a Word document. And then that document will be digitized through PDF. It might be put onto an intranet site, or we may even put that into some kind of learning management solution where people are going to click through to understand how to do something in PeopleSoft. All of that falls under the same umbrella of a legacy mindset. In other words, it's what we call look away training. You're not actually in the thing that you need to do. You're in somewhere else looking, reading, trying to download and memorize information that you will then use eventually when you actually have to go do your work, whether it's filling out a form or doing self-service or open enrollment or approving a transaction. Typically what happens with that legacy mindset, though, is we think that we can, as administrators of the software, is we can sort of write up all this content, we can put it out there, and we just trust that people will go access it when they need it. The problem, of course, is that that's not how it works. And it doesn't necessarily lead to a reduction or elimination of support tickets. So even though we go through all this effort of writing all the possible ways that somebody could use this aspect of the functionality, typically people still call into the help desk, still want to ask, how do I do this? Or I tried to do it and I messed it up. Can you help me? And so ultimately, our efforts to provide this type of training are only partially effective in helping people understand what they do in the application. Beyond that, there are other things that training will never be able to accomplish. So, for example, we can't do things like enforce policy through training. We can give people policy information and we can say, this is what we want you to do. And sometimes the software can be configured to enforce that policy, whether it's some sort of configuration is when you're putting in expenses, or let's say you're doing a timesheet. We could maybe configure it to do certain things. The software only goes a certain way in terms of being able to do policy. We often have, as organizations, have different policies that go beyond what the software can do. And so typically those policies are not, we can document them, we can tell them, hey, this is how you're supposed to do it. But ultimately, nothing sometimes in the software stops them from doing that thing that breaks a policy. So we're always in a catch up mode from an audit perspective, looking for policies that people have broken, maybe doing reviews, whether that's expenses or something else, where we come back through and we say, hey, you've not complied with this policy, therefore we need to address this in whatever means. So ultimately this legacy mindset only gets us part of the way there, and there's essentially another way now, and that's through something called digital adoption. Okay, so digital adoption is something that you see all the time. I say digital adoption is the thing that's hiding in plain sight. It's right in front of you all the time. It's on your smartphone. It's on that website that you went to for your bank. It's on your smart TV when you just turned it on and you don't know what you're supposed to do on the smart TV. Digital adoption essentially takes a different approach to how to get people to do things in the software. Essentially, it says a lot of times people will not take training. They won't they won't sort of understand how to do things in the system. Maybe we try, but ultimately the dirty little secret is that people don't really care about your training. They don't want to be trained. They just want to go in, do the software. And we've really sort of adapted to that as humans, where we're using our smartphones, we're using Amazon.com, we're using our smart TVs or banking websites, and we never ever take training prior to doing those things. And yet, when we talk about PeopleSoft or other enterprise applications, we still have that legacy mindset that says, well, no, we have to train people before they come in. Well, Amazon doesn't do that. Apple doesn't do that. Samsung or whoever doesn't do that. They give you access to essentially, quote unquote, the production version of whatever that is, website, phone, whatever. And then you just start using it. And so without that, a vehicle for training in those other places, they're essentially dropping these things as you go to sort of show you things you can do. So on the left side here, you got the iPhone. It says, hey, do you know if you can, press down the send button, you actually can configure it to send this message later. Great. I wouldn't have known about that because I would never have taken training on how to use my iPhone. On the right side, weather. An iOS update came out and the new feature said, showed you how to look at, daily, hourly weather in a future day for the next 10 days. Great. Didn't know about that. Now you can do that, right? So the software manufacturers basically have to create a way to help people understand how to do these things in the real time, in the flow of actually doing the work. And that's essentially what digital adoption is. So digital adoption platform is essentially no code in the software. Sometimes it's embedded in the software, but essentially it goes on top of the layer of your software. So if PeopleSoft exists at the HTML layer from a user perspective in a web browser, digital adoption tool is going to sit on top of that HTML and essentially guide somebody through how to do things, or enforce policies, or block you from doing certain things. It sits at the HTML layer so it can control that experience. And that is essentially what Oracle Guided Learning is. Oracle Guided Learning is real-time guidance, policy management, error proofing, essentially within the PeopleSoft framework, because it sits on top of the HTML layer. So it provides productivity from day one. So if your users come into the application, you don't have to train them before they come in. You can essentially enforce basically how to do things through a walkthrough. Here you can see a couple screenshots. Everything's sort of grayed out here when I come into the supplier public homepage, for example. Everything's grayed out except for one thing. It says, hey, right here, this is how you register to become a bidder or supplier, right? Click here. If you don't want it, you can always X out, get out of it. You can control that experience for people as administrative work, guide learning. Um, well, let's teach you how the search bar works, right? On the right side here. Let's, did you know you can, in the search, you can look for content, you can look for things in your menu. That's a great way to do that. Or maybe we want to draw people's attention with a beacon, sort of saying, hey, right here, there's AP content here. You can look at this up here. So we're trying to influence people in that process that they're doing their normal work, but we're essentially helping them with productivity. This ultimately is going to reduce those support costs and training costs from the very beginning. So it's training. We don't need to put so much effort into training people because we're going to just help them real time through the process. And if anybody has ever tried to roll out something to a user base that only does certain things very infrequently. So think about somebody who maybe approves a transaction 2 or 3 times a year. They're never going to remember how to do it. And you're not going to, we can expect them to memorize how to do that transaction. The reality is they're not going to memorize. They'll go through the training. If you make them do training at the beginning, they'll learn how to do it. 2, 3, 4 months later, they're not going to remember how to do it. They're going to try to wing it, and they're going to create a support issue. They're going to, I messed something up. I don't know what I did. The transaction's still not approved, for example, and can you just walk me through it? Ultimately, by providing them a step-by-step walkthrough and actually helping them do that thing, they're going to be happier. You're going to be happier because they're not going to be calling in the help desk. This is all very easy to configure. We'll show you a little bit how that works, but essentially it's very easy to just point at something, say, here's my messaging right here. There's the ability to control the experience. Do I want to gray everything out, or do I want to make everything still available? Do I want this to be more of a walkthrough of a transaction, or do I just want to have helpful little tips here and there? And I'm going to show you live all of this live. All of it's integrated from an analytics perspective. So you'll see all of that on the back end. Who clicked on what? How many guides were run for this person? Did they actually follow the steps in the process guide, or did they stop the process guide right in the middle? All of that's embedded in analytics that you don't have to configure. It's just there for you, and you get to sort of use that for the purposes of improving your guides or to look at who's doing what in the guides. This really does flow into the flow of work, conversion, sort of learning, as well as business process. So all of that's available right here. We'll talk a little bit more later, but essentially we help you with that implementation, as well as having what we call starter kit, which is pre-built content that helps walk through all transactions in PeopleSoft. And all you have to do when you work with us is you just take that starting point of content and you just update it for your language. And we help you with all that. We train you how to do it. We also do it for you under a services model. We have all those models available. Originally, this was built for the SaaS application. It's available for PeopleSoft and all HTML-based applications. And when you do buy it for PeopleSoft, you have it available for other applications beyond PeopleSoft as well. Okay, so let's dive a little bit more into the actual use cases. Of course, you're probably thinking about from an education perspective, does it help my users understand the application? Yes, of course it does. It's going to walk them through how to do things. How do I do this transaction? What's the policy around this, whatever. I understand all that, right? So it educates your users, but it does way more things. And I'm going to show you a couple of use cases, actual real life use cases from our customers. It communicates change. So as you're thinking about upgrades, as you're thinking about rolling out new features, typically when, let's say, the users come into a certain page and that page hasn't changed, it doesn't look visually different, but something's new in that page, whether we've rolled out a new feature in a certain field that wasn't available before, or it's just upgraded and it functions differently. Typically, we have a very limited capabilities of actually communicating that change through the PeopleSoft People Tools framework. We could customize to create messaging on the page, but nobody really wants to do customizations in PeopleSoft. So ultimately, we just skip it, But OGL handles that. OGL will communicate that change. It'll actually pop up that message for people. There's different methods to sort of communicate change. One of our very first customers used it to provide previews of a People Tools upgrade that they were going to be experiencing, which was going to be moving them from classic to fluid. Big change management. So they use OGL to communicate, preview that change for people, give them screenshots of what they were going to experience. And then day one, when that change happened, they were ready with messaging saying, hey, I know you're probably confused. Your classic menu is not there anymore. Follow these steps. Look, click here, and we're going to walk you through where's your menu, right? Let's walk you through how to do these things. So it really helped with that change management that otherwise would have been done offline, right? So it's all brought into the application itself. Talk a little bit about policy enforcement. Let's say we require a user to certify when they put in their time entry. We want them to say, yes, I've certified that this meets policy. I've checked the policy, I've verified, I'm clicking yes. If I don't click yes, OGL doesn't allow me to hit submit. Okay, so OGL could block me from hitting submit unless I, as a user, say, yes, I'm verifying that I've done this, I'm certifying that I've done this right, or whatever. It actually goes farther than that, actually can block it if it sees something on the screen that is not in compliance with some kind of policy. Let's say somebody, and this is probably something you can configure in HCM, but let's say I'm putting in 45 hours on my timesheet for a week. It can see that. It can literally block you from submitting that because the policy is you can't put more than 40 hours. So I could see that it's 45, and I could stop you from hitting submit, but until you address that issue where you've gone overboard in terms of you've got 45 hours. It's just a simple example, but that's something we can do at the HTML layer. We can block people from hitting submit. So by doing that, we can essentially enforce policy. This is all personalized in the sense that it can be based on PeopleSoft roles. So let's say you have a group of people who are AP and you want them to only get AP guides versus end users who have a different set of guides. It can be based on their personal role. We talked a little bit about error proofing, but essentially we have the ability to create activation conditions that can prevent certain things if we see errors and validations of the data. So OGL has a function to essentially look for data proofing or data errors and create an activation condition for some kind of guide. That guide could block you from hitting OK. It could pop up a message, hey, we've seen you've done something wrong, and let me walk you through it to make sure it's right. Again, by doing that, you're going to eliminate that as a potential source of a support ticket later on. Ultimately, what organizations are doing is they're migrating those questions that would typically fall to the help desk as an operational support issue. They're migrating all of those how-to questions into the application that are right there, either activated for people based on what they're doing, or it's available as a lookup to find out how to do things. That's completely transforming how people look at help desk. One of the early organizations that did this was Kaiser Permanente, and they've reported that basically their how-to questions have been essentially eliminated as a ticket to the help desk. People don't call them the help desk anymore for PeopleSoft and say, how do I do this? Because they know now OGL will walk them through it. So we think about that, eliminating the volume of tickets coming to the help desk. That is transformational in terms of the way work happens, the way business processes work, but also reduction in costs related to your help desk. So it's a huge reason you would be thinking about digital adoption or an Oracle Guide Learning. And as I mentioned, analytics is the underpinning of all this that allows you to track user behavior, but also measure your adoption outcomes. In other words, that's a fancy way of saying, are people following what we want them to do? Are they following the processes? Are they crashing out of those processes that are not following processes and they're then creating support tickets? We can see that now. They're calling in the help desk, they're creating tickets, and it's related to a certain business process. And we can go in and see if that person is actually following the processes that we've outlined for them within OGL. It's a real game changer. So just want to quickly go through this and we're going to get to our demo. So communication change, talk about that. That's the one I mentioned before. That's with one of our clients. Different client is using it to create personalized guides based on their PeopleSoft roles. So here we've got HR performance reviews that are only coming up for a certain segment of the population. policy enforcement, so something around incidentals. There's a very specific travel and expense policy, and when somebody clicks on meals, incidentals, and travel, we pop up that little eye right there. That's called a smart tip, which I'm going to show you live. That says, "Hey, only actual costs incurred may be claimed," and blah blah blah. So there's some messaging there. It's, "Hey, check out the policy." It's that companion that says, "Hey, I'm bringing policy offline into the system right here." And if they wanted to, they could even go further and block somebody if they're doing something outside of policy. Last one, we had a bug in PeopleSoft for one of our clients that when they hit the OK on trying to schedule a query, it was creating an issue. It was actually creating a bug. It was actually kicking them out of PeopleSoft and creating an issue on the back end. So while that fix needed to be developed from a People Tools and PeopleSoft perspective, that fix was going to take weeks, if not months, to develop, figure out what the root cause is, develop a fix, roll it into test, validate it, eventually migrate to prod. That fix had to come. However, in the meantime, we could pop this message up literally within a couple of hours. Really developed it within an hour, validated it within a couple hours, and had it in production, stopping people from hitting that button, which was just going to create more support tickets, which we didn't need because we already knew that there was an issue, right? So we could stop people from hitting that button, and instead they could click here and be launched into a guide that would walk them through how to get what they wanted, which is scheduling a query, but doing it through a different page, which did not have the bug. Very, very important. Let's redirect those people to a way, and we could turn that on within an hour or two. Okay, with that, let me pause. Raise your hand, or if you want to put anything in the chat, I'll answer any questions now, or I'm going to get in and do the live demo. Okay, I don't see any chats, so I'm going to switch over here, and I'm going to log in, and we're going to do a demo of Org Guide Learning. And please, if you have any questions, just go ahead and raise your hand, put something in the chat that you want to ask a question, and we'll unmute you and let you ask the question. Okay. Minimize that. Okay. So here we're looking at People Tools. Actually, I can't remember. I think it's 861, and PeopleSoft Financials PUM 53, I believe. And you'll notice a couple things that look a little bit different. Of course, all the tiles and everything, that's just our normal fluid homepage. But there are a couple things that are different. First off, we've got this widget over here. This widget is my Org Guide Learning Help Center. So if I click on that, all of the guides that I want to present here in sort of a library sort of format are available here. You can organize them however you want. Here's our starter kit content that is broken down by module, essentially. So accounts payable, billing, general, financials guides, even things like People Tools, enterprise components is built into here as well. All of that, we could have sort of a section for welcome and general announcements that are just sort of more temporary types of messaging. But all of our guides can be organized into these different areas. Each of these areas then have all the guides. I can click on this and launch right into that guide. So this works well if you want to, let's say, I know I want to create a query, but I don't know the steps and I don't really know what I'm doing with creating the query. So I can type in query and find that, oh, there's a guide on how to build a query. I'm going to come back to this one, but essentially this would launch me into a process guide that would then walk me how to do something in PeopleSoft. I'm not going to do that one right now because I want to show you that's just one way of accessing guides. There's other ways to access guides. So for example, I have up here a smart tip that is giving me messages around pages based on certain activation conditions. Now, in this case, the activation condition is, hey, the person just logged in and they are wanting to, we want to tell them about how to, learn about the search bar up here at the top. So we could actually have the, individual engage with that and say, yeah, you know what? I would like to learn more. So we have a smart chip that gives the messaging. that can then lead to then what's called a process guide. This is a different guide that then walks them through doing something with multiple steps. So you can see there's a smart tip here, there's a smart tip here. Maybe if I want to teach people about home pages, understand homepage, personalize your homepage, or add your own homepage, right? So I can teach them how to do that. Typically, this would be something that would be buried within certain training documentation, but here I can bring this right to the forefront with these smart tips. So let's go ahead and launch into a specific process guide. So I'm going to click here to learn more about search. Okay, so what you'll see here is that a pop-up message here is going to walk them through how to search. You can see PeopleSoft is still here. It's grayed out, but it's going to walk me through saying, go ahead and click on next. And the user says, okay, I'm going to learn about search, etc. Okay, click on next. You notice now it draws my attention up to the one button here, which is the search bar. And in that, there is the ability to learn about or search for something in your menu or search for content with a certain area. So I want to teach people about that. So they've launched in this guide. They're going, okay, I want to learn about it. I've just learned, okay, that search bar allows me to search for menu, which is the default, or find content. Okay, great. Now notice it says click on the menu drop down to see different areas. There's no next button. Okay. So I'm going to click on this. And as I click, it's automatically going to take me to the next step. So in other words, OGL is watching what the user does. And as they do the thing that I want them to do from an OGL perspective, it's going to take them to the next step. There's no next button. You don't have to sit there and click next. It's not something that's disconnected from your experience in PeopleSoft. It's embedded in your experience in PeopleSoft. So the user is going to click on the menu. They now have this thing that says, hey, okay, so for AP related content, click on accounts payable and try it out. So, and you also notice this red beacon, which is sort of pulsating here, drawing my attention here to the accounts payable section. So as a user, I go, okay, yeah, I'm going to click on accounts payable. Again, it progresses to the next step. In this case, it says enter a word, search for a word like a voucher, a payment, etc. Enter this word mid-tin. I'm going to copy that, paste that in here. And what you'll notice is that it's automatically searching. Now it doesn't know when I'm done, so it's going to wait for me to click next. I'm going to click next. And it says, yep, your search results are going to display. I could give them information about what they're looking for. I could take them on a different search, for example. But this is just a simple example of saying, yep, here's going to be vouchers and payments related to that supplier named Midton. I'm going to go click on next. And it says, okay, now I want you to switch it back to menu. So let's switch back to menu and click on next. And now it says, now put in a word like voucher. Okay. Put in a word like voucher. And now it says, yep, so here are, the different pages related to vouchers. And you can click on any of these and then go into certain areas. And so by doing that, that's a very short guide. We're already done. It says this concludes the guide on how to use search. For any issues or questions, please contact SpearMC or contact quote unquote our help desk, contact John in systems support, whatever you guys want to say that, right? So bottom line is we're helping somebody through. We're also giving them sort of a lifeline to go connect with somebody in real life to learn more about it if you want to do it that way too. And that's it. We're done. Now, one more thing, this is always available in all of our OGL guides, is we can allow somebody to give feedback. Okay, so you go, you know what, that was just average. Can you provide more help on searching for payments? Whatever, right? And so this is a message that then the user is going to then submit that as feedback. And that's going to go back into the analytics and we can go review that later. And if we see a bunch of people saying, hey, can we, something about payments, oh, let's just go add that to that guide. We'll just add some more information about payments. So all that goes into the back end. You don't have to have that feedback loop. A lot of my clients don't turn that feedback loop on, or you can also do it selectively on certain guides, but not all the guides. Okay, with that, I am going to pause and I'm going to plug in a different phone over here because I'm losing battery. And I see a question. So let me go ahead and see the question. All right. So Karen, LaRoche City in the county of San Francisco. Yes, one of our, in fact, that was the use case there. One of those use cases was from San Francisco. Is in the future an integration to GenAI to use OGL as the UI to be used with Gen AI implementations. I don't totally understand your question, but the question is essentially about how AI is being leveraged with OGL. So currently, there has been some, I would say, intelligence built into OGL already, in the sense that when you are creating your guides, it will understand what you're trying to do and create sample messaging that you can then tailor or modify that. So that's already been built in for a while. I don't have new information on where Oracle is taking OGL from an AI perspective, but there are means to bring that into the process. Generally, OGL's premise is I'm helping the user from a perspective of what they need to do. So if that turns into a chatbot or whatever, that may be where Oracle's headed. I'm not privy to the roadmap for OGL, but I would just say AI is already built into it from the back end. So as you're creating content, there's already sort of an understanding of where you're at and trying to create some sample content for you as you click through and build guides. Hopefully that answers that question. All right. And while I'm on questions, any other questions before I move on? Go ahead and raise your hand or put in the chat window. Okay. So talked about that we have a library of guides. We talked about how on a smart tip, the smart tips can actually come up in different ways. So for example, let's say I just want a smart tip to show up without that question mark. I just want it to be based on hover. So let me move down here to expenses. And as I hover over the expenses tile, I can offer a smart tip that's just a different way of displaying that information. It doesn't require a little circle with the question mark. It actually is just tied to that tile. So as I hover over that tile, it's going to give me some information about it. You can use expenses to create an expense report, view transaction activity, etc. And click here to learn more about it. Now, you always have the ability from these guides to set up to remind me later. And that's helpful when you're popping up messaging for people, but you want them to be able to click out of it and come back to it later. So putting that on this remind me later is very easy. It's just a checkbox. And then if you put that on there, people then have the choice to have this messaging go away for 20 minutes, hour, 3 hours, tomorrow, next week. And then that message will then pop up at that interval for that person. So they go, yeah, you know what? I don't really want to learn about this right now, but because I'm going to go do something right now. Remind me later. I'll take a look at it later. So that remind me later is a very nice feature. So we have the library of guides. We have smart tips that pop up based on, the user sees this and they kind of hover on it, or they hover over there. What about the scenario where we just want to communicate change to people or communicate that there's something available to them and they don't know anything about OGL? I'm going to click on this e-procurement tile. And as I go into this, what you're going to see is that there's going to be a pop-up message. So think about this as, let's say you're a new user and you're coming into PeopleSoft for the first time, and it's going to pop up messaging saying, hey, welcome to PeopleSoft. We see you're a new user, which, by the way, OGL knows when you're a new user, and says, hey, let me tell you some things you can do here. In this case, it's an ePro homepage. Let's say we just rolled out eProcurement to people, and we want people to know about the policy to become a requisitioner, or maybe we want to click here to actually create a requisition. All of that is things that we can pop up, even without the user even knowing or asking for help. We can insert help or messaging to people. And that's a real game changer. Because again, if we think about that legacy mindset, it only works when the user knows they need help and they need to go out and look for that help. They can find that training guide on the shelf or on the intranet site. In this case, we can insert messaging, we can insert ourselves into the process flow of people. And that's a game changer from a support perspective. Okay, and I do see another question. Let me click on chat. How does it remind the user? Okay, so again, let me close that. So the way the reminder works is that message, however that message is, let's say it was that ePro message, you saw the remind me later on that ePro message, same thing. So if I clicked on remind me later in 2 weeks, that pop-up message would go away and will come back in 2 weeks. Now, some messages and some guides, you want them to be sticky. You want them always to be there, whether they're a smart tip or something, right? In some guides, they're just a one-time. We want to tell something to somebody, and we say, hey, do you want to learn about this? When they click no, that message goes away forever if we configure it that way. Or we say, no, we want that message to come up all the time. In both those cases, you can put the remind me later and it would come back later. So let's say this pop-up would be gone for that interval. And the next time I come back in after this interval and I hover over it, the message would come back up. So that's sort of how the remind me later works. Okay. So we've talked a little bit about the smart tip, how that sort of shows up in different places. It hovers. There's a little button for it. Let's go ahead and walk through a different process guide. So it's the one that we talked about before. I'm going to click on query. And I see that there, I'd like to learn more about how to build a query. I know that there's great things you can do with query, but I don't know the first thing about query. Okay, great. Let's click on here, build a query. And this is going to, again, walk me through as a user how to build a query. So I'm going to go ahead and click on next. And it pulls my attention up to the nav bar, which is how we're going to do it. Now, we could have done this through home pages and tiles. If we had a query tile, could have done it through search. We happen to, build some of these guides based on the menu simply because that's the hardest way to code these process guides. But let's say you were to work with us and want our content, we would convert that over to search or to a different path. If you wanted to take a different path for navigation, there's essentially 3 or 4 different paths to get to query, but we have coded as the hardest one, and then to simplify it if people want it to be simplified. But let's go ahead and click on this. So we're in the nav bar. We're going to navigate in. You'll see it says select menu. We're going to click on menu. And you'll notice it drags right to the right spot in the menu. In this case, reporting tools. These menus can be pretty long, and a lot of people don't know where everything is. But these guides, if nothing else, these process guides get you the right spot in the menu. And I like it for that, right? It takes you right to the right spot. So click on reporting tools. Again, it's going to draw my attention down here. Click here on query. It's just going to keep walking me through the entire process. Click query manager. And now I'm navigating straight into the query manager page. And as it comes up, it's going to say, take me to the next step. Click here for create a new query, right? Create a new query. And now I've gone from a mode of walking somebody how to do something very specifically to pausing and explaining something. Okay, so those are two different things. Our guides can explain things as people go, or they can be very prescriptive. Do this, click here, put this information in, right? So in this case, we're pausing and we're explaining that the records page here is essentially the way you look up your records or tables in the PeopleSoft database. So we're explaining stuff as we go. So now we click next, and now we're doing something very specific. We're telling them enter this very specific record name. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste that in there and click next. It says click on search. Okay. And now it says, okay, in most cases, you're going to select one base record from this page. If you navigate back here, you're going to do an any join, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. We're going to explain that later. And we want you to go ahead and click on add record. Now I could go back here, but I can't click next, right? Because it's telling me go ahead and add the record. So I'm going to go ahead and add the record. And again, I went from doing something very specific, like clicking add record, to now pausing and saying, okay, great. Now you're on the query page. Let me explain what the query page is all about. Query page is now about looking for the fields that are available on this record that you just selected. So again, we're explaining things as we go, and then we're going to cut right back into doing something really specific. So now go ahead. Yep. So here's the field. This is the name of the field. This is the key, and we could explain what that means here as a key field, which is the whole thing we do in our query training. And now we're like, good, go ahead and click on, check all, and it's going to bring all those things in. And now it says move the fields tab. And now you're going to notice, okay, now the fields page. What's the fields page? Well, fields page is where you just added all those things, and you can do things like change your headings or order by, etc. So again, we're moving back and forth between do something very specific to let me just explain what you're looking at right now. And that's the sort of the going back and forth thing between these process guides that really is pretty helpful for people as they go through their processes. Okay, I'm going to stop this for now. I think you guys get the picture on how this sort of works. Again, we have a feedback loop on this one. I'm not going to say anything on that one. And we've just walked through a process of how to build a query. So as I mentioned, our guides will provide content on how to do all these different things from, different modular based, how to do certain transactions, how to be a manager and approve transactions, et cetera. This is in financials. HCM would have similar things for time and interest, time and labor, benefits, all sorts of different things over in the HCM system as well. Okay. Any questions there? I got a couple more things I'm going to show you, and then we'll be wrapping up here in a few minutes. Okay, a couple more guides to show you. So we've talked through a process guide. We talked about a smart tip. We talked about a message guide, which is that one that popped up when I went to the ePro homepage. I'm going to show you another one called the task list. These are really great because what task lists do is they combine multiple guides. So here, think of the use case. I have a new user coming into PeopleSoft, and I want them to learn certain things, or I want them to do certain things in order to understand how to use the basics of the system. So maybe I want them to set up their contact information, or maybe I want them to set up their user preferences. I want them to understand search. I want them to understand what the process monitor is. So these are different guides that they can do. And as they do them, it could mark them off that they've completed them. So in this case, I just finished that using search one. You saw me do it, and it marked it that I had just completed it. So I have, as a new user, I've completed one of the 5 guides that I need to do. Now, we could even make this a little bit more in your face if we want to do it that way by actually having it out as a pop-up that then can be popped up for every, let's say, every new user. Again, the scenario is I'm a new user, I come in and it says, hey, welcome. I want you to go do these things before you do anything else. And essentially what it's going to be able to do, it's going to track that user at that they've done the, one of the 5 guides. When they've completed all 5 guides, this thing can go away. This task list can go away. In other words, I'm kind of, I'm not forcing a really heavy hand, but I'm going to keep pushing it like, hey, I want you to do these things. And until you do them, right, I'm going to keep bringing it back to you as a new user. That's a great scenario for new users. It can also work in a situation like open enrollment. It can be something that we could pop up, even if it's not just a new person or they need to complete something. Maybe the task list is not something we're tracking from a completion perspective. Maybe the task list is a set of guides that walk somebody through how to do something a little more complex that requires multiple steps. So, for example, I need to close out POs and roll them forward every year. Well, there's multiple things I need to do, including running a query to see if there's balance left over. I need to check on this and that, and then ultimately I need to do things on that PO. And maybe I want to, I have it all documented how to do it. I can bring that documentation into a set of process guides, and then have that set up there on rolling POs. And that's my task list. And my buyers who do this can have those offline procedures brought into a set of task lists or a set of processes that are then available for them to run through every time to remember how to do things that maybe they don't do that frequently. Again, in that use case, we can turn it off from tracking. So it's not actually tracking that they've done these things. They're just a set of guides that are always there, and you can walk somebody through how to do the things in sequence. So those are 2 different ways of using task lists. Okay. Last thing I'm going to show you here in the guides is what we call our job aids. A lot of people go, okay, it's great that it can walk me through how to do things in PeopleSoft. What if I just want to see it? I don't want to actually do that in the system. I don't want to actually right now. I don't want to do it. I just want to look at it. I just want to look at the process. Can I see it? Yes. There is what's called a step guide. And so from here, this using search, I'm going to click on this step guide right here. This is actually going to launch me into the actual screenshots and messaging that appear in all of those steps in that process guide. Let me detach that, bring it over here into its own window. And I can now see all of the steps going through and all what actually happens. In fact, this one, there's something wrong with the screenshots. It's all grayed out. This is there was an update that messed that up. So I apologize about that. But normally this would be all in color, and you can see kind of the messaging pop up here. This step guide is now available for somebody to see. They can also print it out if they want to. So if they clicked on that, I guess I can go ahead and do that. It's going to maybe save it as a PDF. And actually, that's kind of messed up because my screenshots are messed up there. Let me try that again. So you can see the screenshots will come up properly. So I can print this to a PDF. If I really wanted to, I could make this a PDF. The question that people inevitably ask is, can I modify the language, on this guide? Can I create a header or whatever on this file? No, you can't. It's not currently available in OGL. But I actually like that because I don't really want to encourage people to go spend a lot of time building an offline Word document. It's actually antithetical to doing online guided learning, online digital adoption. So I'm okay with not having the ability to fancy up a Word document. It's not really the point of what we're trying to do here, but it is available if you want to have that document created. The other thing is I can create an email, and I think I don't have Outlook open, so unfortunately this will take a minute for me to open up Outlook. But eventually this will create an actual email that creates a link that then allows me to send that link to somebody. And when they click on that link, they're going to come back right to this page and see all of the steps one by one. So yeah, I apologize. I think I don't have Excel open, or sorry, Outlook open. So unfortunately, it's not going to create that. But it would create a little email that you can then send that out with a link back to this step guide. Okay, I think that's it for the live demo portion. Let me pause there. Are there any additional questions as I move back to my PowerPoint? And I don't know if there's a way to raise your hands or not. So I think you're gonna have to just put your name in the chat if you want to. Okay, without any more questions, let's move back. We talked a little bit about the use cases. What you're seeing here is actually how to build guides behind it. So as you build guides, so when you buy OGL, you license that from us. It comes with training, so we teach you how to build guides. We also bring you our content, and we can work on the actual content, show you how to update those guides, make modifications, insert additional steps, etc. So the interface to build guides, very easy. You open up OGL, which is this application back here. It's the SaaS application. It's OGL. It's the Oracle's software, right? It's through a SaaS. We open that up. We go into our application, and we can create a new guide, or we can modify an existing one. Once that happens, it launches into PeopleSoft with this overlay sort of toolbar that then allows us to put in our content, link the guide to, or link that step into a very specific HTML object, etc. So one tile here equals one guide, whether that's a process guide, a smart tip, or task list. That's one guide. There's no limit how many guides you want to create, so you can create as many as you want. The process of developing is all done in a non-production PeopleSoft environment. And then what happens is you essentially just click on this draft button right there, and there's a button that says publish, just says publish. You click on that, and that publishes that guide, easy for me to say, into production. So then that guide is then available in your PeopleSoft production environment. And it's really that simple. There's no migration. There's no move this through IT or submit a request, whatever. I mean, there's still segregation of duties and security in here. So it allows certain people to publish and not others, for example, if that's what you want to do. But once you do have the access to publish, you just click a button and it's published to production. It's really that simple. This is a little picture of the analytics. So we can see kind of when people are running things, what they're running. We can dive into one specific guide and see how many people are running this and when they're running it. We can actually dive into one specific user and see, okay, what has this user done? What have they run? Narrow it down by date range, by guides, all of that. So it really gives us a pretty incredible opportunity as an administrator or support person in PeopleSoft to go look at what people are actually doing in PeopleSoft with this sort of tracking of what they're doing in OGL. if somebody calls into a help desk and says, "Hey, um, I don't know how to do this thing," you can go walk them through that OGL guide together. They probably won't call again. Sometimes people might call and say, "Hey, I did the guide, I ran the guide, but it didn't work." You actually can go behind the scenes and say, "Did they actually run it? Yes or no?" Or did they kind of dump out, maybe in the middle of it and didn't complete it, that type of thing. So all that information is available through the back end. And then, of course, the job aid. This is what the job aid should have looked like with the color screenshots. And then, like I said, that email will pop up that can then send that guide to somebody for them to actually check it out and to look at it. Okay. All right. Just finish up here, last couple minutes. So SpearMC Mythics, we're a part of Mythics now. We're the official value-add reseller implementer of OGL. So when you license with us, you're going to get these things at the top just from licensing. We're going to install it for you. We're going to create some example guides for you. We're going to work with you on your design standards. So what does your organization have from a design standard perspective? And then we do a training workshop. So it's a full day, it can be broken up into multiple days, where we're taking your people in, we're teaching them how to build guides. We also do quarterly trainings through a special interest group. So some of you, I saw some of your names on there. I know some of you attend that special interest group. We do quarterly training. So every time OGL comes out with an update, we take that, we train everybody on those updates and how that might be contextualized for your PeopleSoft environment, things to watch out for, that type of thing. And then we'll come back around with an annual assessment optimization on an annual basis for you as part of licensing. We also then have an ongoing support service that then you can get access to our starter kit. All our pre-built content is then available through our ongoing support service where we bring those guides to you and we not only tailor those guides to you, but also can build custom content for you. So we work with you to build that custom content. We're still training you, so we're not taking over 100%. We're still just, working on a model where it's a blend. You guys have capabilities and access to do things. We're helping you do those things. We're also building, maybe we'll take the really complicated ones, maybe teach you guys how to do the basic ones. It's all just based on what you want as a customer on that mix of responsibility. We also then will help you then through those upgrades and pumps. So as you do those upgrades and pumps, we're going to be there to update our guides, help you build new guides to help your users understand the new features and all of that. I will say most of our clients are pretty self-sufficient with OGL. It's really become something that people like a lot and end up using and learning how to use on their own. So it's a pretty easy tool to learn with time and with us supporting you on that process. Talked a little bit about our starter kit, some of the guides. Here's just a little quick screenshot of that. And I'm at time. So I'm available here to answer any additional questions. If anybody wants to ask now, you are free to put something in the chat. I'm also available to do this session in a private, so I do these demos like all the time. If you call me, email me, etc., we can do a private session for you and your organization and talk through how that might look for you, and you can get all your questions answered, as well as then, of course, if you were interested in pricing and wanting to look at this and to actually get a quote, we would work with you on building that quote for that. Okay, and with that, see if there's any additional questions. I don't see any questions. I don't think I would see if anybody's raised their hand, but if you do, feel free. Let's see.